Hi guys, it's Redbeard with another In My Opinion video, my weekly vlog, where I talk about updates on the channel, what you can expect in the future, and where I talk about general topics that interest me. Alright, so first things first. Maybe you haven't noticed it yet, but last week I uploaded the very first episode of my new LP, Mad Max. And since it's the first video, it's quite a long one. It's almost an hour and a half long. I do realize a lot of you probably don't just sit back and go watch a video of this length. So that's why for future videos, I want to bring this down to 20 minutes or maybe max around half an hour. Also, since I like to record longer gaming sessions, I probably won't do a proper intro and outro. Or maybe I'll just add it in later while I'm editing. These longer sessions happen most of the time when I'm really into a game and can't wait to see what will happen next. One more thing I'd like to add on breaking the videos up into smaller chunks is that this also heavily depends on the type of game I'm playing. Say for instance I'm playing a classic game like the very first Deus Ex. These levels tend to be very long and I like to complete the missions one at a time. So these videos will be longer than in other games. If it's for example a racing game, well I can do a race in 20 minutes easily or maybe even 10 minutes. But when it comes to these games with longer missions and a longer story mode and everything, I rather not break them up in smaller chunks because I think it messes up with the flow and the story in my opinion. So that's what I really wanted to share with you guys on that subject. Regarding this week, you can expect another Mad Max LP of course. I actually planned to upload the first LP on last Friday. However, this didn't really work out because there were very long rendering times. And I also had some problems with Handbrake, which is a program that I use to downsize my videos. So I can upload them faster. And to give you an example with that, the original size of the LP before editing was actually 40 gigabytes. So that was for an hour and a half. And after rendering in Sony Vegas 13, that's what I use to edit and render my videos, it was still about 30 gigabytes. And that's because I took a constant bitrate of 50. So the render time already took like about 7 hours, which is, well, long. Too long in my opinion, but yeah, that's for another time. And it also is that long because I do my rendering using the CPU. I can't use the GPU because in Sony Vegas Pro 13, the one I'm using, the CUDA system still doesn't work. And that's a big difference for people with an NVIDIA card. Like if you have an AMD card, it's fine. You can use the AMD card to render your video. But there are some problems between Sony and NVIDIA, and the CUDA system isn't implemented in the right way. So if you have like a later GeForce, like a more modern GeForce video card, it won't allow you to use the CUDA system. I mean, it will say in the program that the CUDA system is available, and it will give the illusion that you're rendering it with the CUDA, but actually your CPU, if you will check like in your system resources, it will show that like all of your cores are still using and that your video card is just sitting there doing nothing. So only if you had like earlier versions, I think it's up to the GTX 580 or something like that. If you have that, it will do the CUDA rendering, but any card later, it won't do the CUDA rendering anymore. So, and actually the funny thing is that Sony is pointing to NVIDIA that they should get on board of the OpenCL train, which is another method of rendering. Whereas NVIDIA is just pointing to Sony saying like, no, what you have to do is properly implement the CUDA system. So, I mean, they're just running around in circles and blaming each other, and that's all good and well, but in the end it doesn't help us one bit. So anyways, I rendered the video file in Vegas, and after running it through Handbrake, I managed to get the file size down to around 8 gigabytes. And that is something I can live with. It doesn't take too long for me to upload 8 gigabytes, but 30 gigabytes, that's a whole different story. And after that I uploaded the video, of course, to YouTube, and I think it took a full day before the 1440p at 60 FPS option was shown. So at first I thought something was wrong, because 1080p at 60 FPS shows up rather quickly after you uploaded the video. But this really took a long time, so I thought something was wrong, or I uploaded the wrong file size, or I used the wrong bitrate or something like that. I also tried to upload a test version using the new H.265 codec, but YouTube didn't allow that. So my guess is that they still have to implement the new H.265 codec, which is actually a lot better codec. I mean, we're now still using H.264, which is the codec that was introduced in 2003, so that's like 14 years old now, or 13. But the new codec really, it gives you smaller file sizes while retaining like a better image quality. And in regard to that, because of the long rendering times, over the course of the weekend I've also been looking into speeding up my rendering process. And this is when I came across something really interesting, and it's called Vegas to Handbrake. And since I use Vegas to do all my rendering and Handbrake to do all my encoding and reduce the file size, I thought maybe I can eliminate one of the two. Or either I don't want to render in Sony Vegas if I can just pass it along to Handbrake and let Handbrake do the complete encoding. And that is exactly what I came across. It's the Vegas to Handbrake tool, and you have to install a debug mode frame server, it's called, and that can severely cut down on the rendering time. And what it basically does, and that's from what I understand, is that you can still edit your files in Sony Vegas, but then you don't render them in Vegas. You actually send the timeline straight to Handbrake, and that's by using the debug mode frame server, and then you let Handbrake do the rendering. And thanks to the optimized codecs in Handbrake, it's not only faster in rendering, but it also leaves you with a smaller file size. So I haven't tried it out yet, but I'm planning to run some tests this week and see if I can get it to run, because if that would work, it will save me a lot of time. Oh yeah, and for you for the guys that are interested in my rendering settings, well, first of all, I record all my gameplay using Shadowplay, because that has almost almost none or zero impact on your performance. So we've really come far in the last 10 years, because I remember way back that I started using with Fraps, and that was really a heavy hit on your machine. I mean, it could easily knock down, well, say 10 to 20 frames on your frame rate, and the file size was just enormous. They were huge file sizes, and it was like after every 4 gigabytes or something, the video would split up, so you would have like multiple videos of 4 gigabytes even though it's one clip, because the file sizes were that large. And the hard drives, of course, were way smaller back then. But I made it work, and I made a couple of videos using gameplay I recorded with Fraps, and it got me pretty far. But after that I moved on to internal capture cards, and I had both the AverMedia Gamer HD and later the Elgato Game Capture HD60 Pro. And the thing I really liked about these cards is that they had little to no impact on the CPU, and because they had built-in encoders, they kept the file sizes small. And the Elgato even managed to capture gameplay in 60 FPS, although up to 1080p and no resolutions above that. But at the time that was a big plus for me. And then Nvidia came along with their GeForce Experience and consequently Shadowplay. And since I tried that out, I actually never looked back. back. I mean, because it's so easy to use and it delivers great quality. And to get back to the settings, I record my gameplay in 1440p with a bitrate of 50 MB. And this is high enough for smooth transactions. And it's only when I really play an intense, fast-paced action game where there's a lot of stuff going on screen, I set the bitrate higher to probably 70. You could set it all the way up to, I think with NVIDIA Shadowplay it's 130, but above 70 I don't see much of a difference, and I don't think there is much of a difference. Yes, it crams more information into because of the higher bitrate, but you won't really see it on screen. So after the gameplay is recorded, I then edit it in Vegas and I render it out. And what I do most of the times is I set a constant bitrate in Vegas to retain the quality, because of course Shadowplay is already compressed. I mean, yes, it isn't raw footage, it's compressed by using an NVIDIA codec. So I set it at the same bitrate as that I recorded it in to retain the quality. And I just leave the same resolutions and everything. And for the bitrate of the audio, I use 384, which is also, or 512, which is also recommended by YouTube itself. And then, after the rendering is done, you end up with still a huge file. And that is the file I put through Handbrake to reduce the file size. So in the end, when I came across that Vegas to Handbrake tool that I mentioned earlier, that is really interesting. So I'll probably run some tests this week and report back in the next weekly vlog next week. And of course, all of the rendering also depends on the PC you're running with. And if you're interested in my specs, you can find a link down below in the video description. Or you can just check out the about page of my channel, where you'll find a detailed list of my #PC Master Race PC. Nah, just kidding. I equally love PCs and consoles. So that's kind of what I was up to last week. I dove into the world of bitrates and encoding and rendering. But besides that, I'm currently also working on a showcase video, which I mentioned in my previous vlog. And I have no idea when this video will be done, since I work on it whenever I have time, and you can imagine that it isn't all day every day. And I don't want to give away too much information on it. However, I can tell you that it's going to be a video game music video. And of course it will feature cars, because I love cars, and an awesome song by none other than The Prodigy. And as for the project itself, I would say I'm about 50% done with it. Oh, and it will be in black and white. And you will say black and white? Yes, black and white. But once you see the video in combination with the music track I chose, you will understand why it's going to be in black and white. So that's what I'm working on, and for this week you guys can look forward to a new episode of the Mad Max LP, and maybe I will also upload a different showcase video I still have lying around. It's a replay of a rather exciting race I did with a very cool finish, so I'm curious what you guys think of that. It's also a classic old school racing game, so don't look at the graphics. As for me, I will be playing around with the Vegas to Handbrake tool to see if I can cut down on the rendering and encoding times. And for the rest, I'll probably do some work on the showcase video I mentioned earlier. And of course, as always, I'll be enjoying some games. Oh, and while we're on the subject of games, if you're wondering what the hell it is I'm playing in this video, it's an old classic called Dungeon Keeper 2. Some of you may probably know this, some of you may probably be a big fan of this game or even played the first one. Anyway, it's a game by Bullfrog, which was a studio by Peter Molyneux. Peter Molyneux, is that how you pronounce his name? Peter Molyneux? I don't know. Anyway, the guy who also did the Fable games. And this was before Fable. And it was it is a fantastic game. where you actually take the role of an evil dungeon keeper and you're trying to rid the land of all that is good and holy. So that's a very nice approach to a game. You get to build your own dungeon, complete with cool rooms, changing from a chicken feeding room to torture rooms, an arena, oh, and even a casino where you're for the entertainment of your minions. And the more you expand your dungeon, the more creatures you will attract that will help you in your quest to take over the world. So if you've never played it, you really should give it a try. It's an old game, so you'll probably have some problems trying to get it to run on Windows 10, if you're using Windows 10. Or even Windows 7 and 8 will be difficult to get it to run with. I think Windows XP is no problem, but I don't think anyone still runs on Windows XP. Otherwise, you just have to check out GOG, Good Old Games. You can buy it there for, I think, $10, and it will be optimized for Windows 10 as well. So, if you've never played it, give it a try. And on that evil note, we'll conclude this video. Once again, thank you for watching. Be sure to subscribe if you're new to the channel or if you want to see more content in the future. If you have an opinion of yourself, do leave a comment. I love to hear what you guys think. And, as always, I'll see you guys in the next video.